We are getting endless legions of spoilers from FFG. Welcome to the podcast where we discuss how to help maneuver your opponents. I'm Faith, and I'm here with Jrod and his Dudeness. We are recording today on Wednesday, June 5th, and so we'll be chatting about the cards that have been revealed before this date. Jrod, who is your favorite card which we have gotten so far that sparks joy for you?
For me, it's definitely going to be Endless Legion. Let me be very clear about this. It's not about it being like good and competitive, even though I am kind of like the spike player of the group here. It's because this card just sparks a lot of joy in me because I'm going to at some point beat someone with this card where I get Admiral Piet and 2 Crate Dragons and just one-shot my opponent with it, and it's going to be really fun.
Why stop there? Just add a Darth Maul in there too.
Yeah, I mean, you could say the options are endless. This card.
Wait, we don't have a Darth Maul yet.
A Maul, I know.
Oh, true.
He's just a Maul because he did get cut in half, so obviously he loses half his title, right? So
true. And the best thing about this card, in my opinion, is all the clones on it. I'm definitely gonna want.
The artwork is pretty sweet. Not gonna lie. Yeah, the artwork on it is pretty rad.
Like I honestly can't wait for set 3. Like I might pre-order like just 3 cases of set 3 and just keep them to sleep with at night. All the cases. I'm gonna sleep with the cases at night because like I'm gonna love set 3. Not that I don't just like love set 2 as well, because set 2 has been great so far. But like as a Clone Wars fanboy, I just am super excited for that set to be released.
Speaking of the Endless Legions, what I am excited about it is showing us that, and we got on the stream most recently, that there will be other legendary double aspect cards. And so I'm just glad to see more of these double of the same aspect cards that we're getting, which is going to help expand the pool, make that idea of running 2 of the same aspect even more viable as an option. So that's something I'm excited. I'm excited to see them add the legendary rarity again, because though rarity doesn't equal power, it does mean that we're going to get some interesting abilities, at least, like this one is, which is giving us something which is pretty strong. Only a few ways that we can normally play cards out of our resource row. I do think this art is cool. It's not as good, though, as my favorite card that we've gotten revealed, which is Coronet City, which is such a beautiful art, which is one of the new bases which has been spoiled this week.
The new cunning base.
The cunning base, one of the 2 cunning bases. And just for those that maybe didn't know, it's looking like we're only going to get common bases this set. Actually, they announced that, so we are only going to get. It has been confirmed.
Bases. No rare bases this set.
But this art is my favorite of the cutting so far. It's got a beautiful Star Destroyer in the background flying off, and so some beautiful action in the foreground.
Pretty cool, I like it. Did we even explain what Endless Legion does?
I didn't realize that. So let's
it's a 14 cost, a double command aspect, and you reveal any number of resources you control and play each unit revealed this way for free.
Did you say it was 4 cost? Did you say a 4 cost?
I said 14 cost. Did I not?
14?
He said 14.
Wow.
14 is a lot. Yeah, we did. You can't just brush over the fact that this costs 14.
But it's a double green. A lot of
resources.
Which means
you are in the ramp color, yes, and this is the ultimate ramp payoff for sure. And unless your opponent literally has super laser blast, you're probably just going to win on the spot as well.
Unless you have overwhelming ambush, and then
that's true.
How would you get that? How would you get that?
I already explained it. It's Crate Dragon and Piet.
But they would also have to have a bunch of units on the board for you to ambush into.
Yeah, I was thinking you might even have to play some amount of Wreckers just so that way you can flip everything, and Wrecker can like deal 5 damage because let's say they have like a 6 HP unit or whatever.
Right.
So you can like
maximize the damage.
Yeah, something like that. Or even like Death Troopers or whatever, like have some amount of cards that like you can have to resource that are there to be able to flip would be kind of it.
It does work moderately. I mean, one thing, again, with the deck building, these double aspect cards, because you're locking your deck out of a second color, these have to be pretty decent for you to go that way. And thinking about the other legendary, Command does have a ramp option, so that's pretty nice. And it does have like a return card from your graveyard, which is nice because then it can give a unit from your graveyard. which can allow you to have another resource, so you can get up to 14 faster. And thinking even of a card, which is a little bit going to be controversial, Corel, which will, when you have all these units, now you'll be drawing more cards, maybe. So some potential.
You're not playing Krell. Oh, but like you'd probably be playing the bounty rank card.
Well, I honestly was confused on what my man had just said, and I wasn't following. But you mean General Corel?
Yeah.
The rare double green boy from the first set that sees absolutely zero play and will continue to see absolutely zero play. That guy, you mean?
Yeah.
Yes.
I'll just say that I hope that all of the good double aspect cards don't end up being legendary. Because like right now from set 1, while there's like solid double aspect cards, the only real good ones are legendary. And like
Bodhi's good.
Yeah, I'm not saying that they're not like playable. They're playable. Like Bodhi's playable. Bodhi's not good. He's playable. I think there's a different. Like if Bodhi's like a 3/4, then he'd be good, right? Because then he's like overstated and has a good ability. But he's just playable because he's got a good ability with like reasonable stats.
He does die to a 2-drop. He dies to a 2-drop.
Yeah, he can get outshined pretty quickly.
If he takes out a card from your hand, he's already done his job. But no. See, I personally, I wish these cards weren't legendary. Because first of all, this card is not going to feel great to open up. You're going to be like, oh, I got a legendary. Oh, I got a Endless Legions. So like, let's imagine a scenario where you're going to make an Endless Legions deck. How many copies of Endless Legions are you putting in your Endless Legions deck?
2.
3.
3?
You have to draw it. Otherwise, you lose. It's the whole point of the deck.
Yeah, but it
costs
costs 14
resources, so you're going to draw half your deck.
What are the chances you're not going to draw it by the time you get to 14?
I've played 3 Darth Vaders and played 3 games in a row. Didn't draw a single one of them. So
that's a skill issue.
True. Big fact.
So I mean, the point is that while we're debating, it's not an automatic slam dunk 3 of anyways, even if you are playing it.
When you're playing it wrong.
I think you could get away with 2 and be totally fine. But maybe you're supposed to play 3 just to guarantee you have it all the time, always. But
I'll be playing 4, actually.
I don't know.
This is one of those weird cards that seems better in constructed than unlimited, because getting to 14 resources unlimited
it's never happening in a draft.
It's pretty crazy.
This card's getting passed around like 18 times in the draft.
Well, I mean, I guess it depends on how it would. I mean, if I pick one a legendary, most of the time, I'm like, yeah, I know what I'm taking. Right?
Speaking of getting passed around, though, I do want to bring our attention to the other legendary, which in lore has been passed around quite a bit, which is the DARKSABER.
The segue, bro?
Oh, wait, hold on. Before we segue, I went back and read Galactic Ambition, and technically I can Galactic Ambition card.
It's a unit, isn't it?
Oh, it is unit.
Yeah, it is. Don't worry, guys. We're gonna edit this out so we don't look stupid.
No, we're not. I'm gonna. It's fine. Print this away. DARKSABER, go.
DARKSABER is
because I was just literally about to segue into the DARKSABER about the other legendary that sparks more joy for me personally.
Well, why don't you lead us off then?
It's the 4-cost command aspect. It's a 4/3 upgrade. You may attach it to a non-vehicle unit. And while playing this upgrade on a Mandalorian unit, you can ignore its aspect penalty, and attach unit gains on attack, give an experience token to each other friendly Mandalorian unit. So I think the straight obvious place that this goes on is Sabine Leader from set 1. She deploys on 4. This equips for 4. You put it on her. Now she's a 6/8, I believe. If my math is correct. And she attacks for 7. That's a lot of damage, boys. Like, I mean, and I think you can build a deck to always be playing a Mandalorian on turn 1 and turn 2, so you at least have a shot to give out an experience token or 2.
Like Sabine unit, or
you have Sabine unit, you have
Ketsu. I was just looking at him. The turn 3. I don't know if the Night Owl Skirmisher is going to be worth it.
But just to think, like, those are going to be relevant cards. Like, those will be relevant boys that you're going to be playing.
You can even play
Mandalorian Warrior. So you turn 2 Mandalorian Warrior, buffing your turn 1 Mandalorian play.
Yeah. I was going to say, you can play that guy.
Yeah, I think that's, like, good enough, honestly.
especially on
But
like Sabine, because then she's a 3/4, so like she won't trade evenly with whatever unit they play.
exactly. Like, I actually think that Mandalorian Warrior is going to be pretty good. He's like halfway between a Fleet Lieutenant and a Wing Leader. Both of those were absolutely playable cards. But we're getting sidetracked a bit. The Darksaber 4/3 upgrade that just makes your dude a beast. And if you have bonus Mandalorians, you're just getting even more value. Like, this thing looks like about just spiral out of control if you don't answer it.
So it is a high cost upgrade. Like our lightsabers we have so far, we either have the ones that cost 2, which give +3/+1, but they have specific effects on certain units, or we've got the generic ones, Fallen Lightsaber and Jedi Lightsaber, which cost 3 and give +2/+2 with an effect for +3/+3. I'm sorry. So then we're paying 1 more for
+1 attack.
+1 attack with an effect which is questionable. Let's say it's very specific. Unlike
it is very narrow.
Yeah. Which the lightsabers do have specific
There's
ones
also
as well.
very narrow because you need to Force Boy to activate it. And there's sometimes I'm just playing it as a 3/3 buff. I'm looking at you, IG88.
Yes. So what do we think about paying 1 more for a +1 attack buff, but also the trait specific effect?
I think it's fine, but like I think it's where it's going to shine the most if it's going to see a lot of play is going to be with Sabine from set 1. It just makes most sense. She deploys at 4, you play as her 4. Like, it's an amazing turn, and there's only a couple of cards that really deal with that on that turn, which would be No Good to Me Dead. So if you're not against yellow villainy, you know,
you can just take down or force choke Sabine when she deploys too, though.
Sure. I mean, hopefully you're playing around that as best you can, obviously, but
obviously, right?
Because I mean, at no point, even before this card, you didn't want to have her do that. And like the best thing about that is if they do that, then you can just play something else and then maybe resource this or whatever, depending on what the other unit is. So
what I really like about this card is its aspect, because for those that know the lore, which as you probably heard, I probably don't know a ton of the lore. I know some of it, some not. Being green aspect is we have 2 cards that have had the Darksaber, being Maul and Gideon. Moff Gideon. And I think Moff Gideon's actually pretty interesting with this because he has Overwhelm. And so now you're giving it to him. He deploys at 5, so it's 1 later than Sabine, but he is already in the aspect, so he doesn't need that part of the effect. He doesn't trigger the ability to give your Mandalorians things, but having that. Oh, sorry, he triggers it, yes. But if you have those Mandalorians that are smaller, that like you want to use with Moff's ability, you could do that. So but with that Overwhelm was interesting to me as well. Maul, who also had the Darksaber, another interesting character as well with Overwhelm. A little less on that one because he can be targeted by non-leader cards like a Waylay. But I think still interesting though that they made the card able to be played with Mandalorians, which is where it's from, but also have it in the aspect that both Gideon and Maul were in.
Yeah, I mean, I personally don't see anywhere where you're going to put it on a unit. It's not a leader because it costs too much and there's too much rule for those kind of things, or too many ways to disrupt it. Plus, all like the upgrade hate that's going to be naturally like everyone's going to be playing the Mandalorian 3/2s in the set 1, the ship there that removes an upgrade.
The same blade Fang Fighter.
Yeah, like that's just going to be main decked in all like red decks because of the set. So like
that's another Mandalorian you could be playing on turn 2.
Yes, correct. But like. So that's why I think like Darksaber is like probably only going to see play in Sabine, because like if you're just killing like Darksaber, then Sabine's still hitting you for 3, and you can't like waylay her. So it's like a lot of I don't know.
I guess that's why I like Moff, because Moff with the Overwhelm, at least even if they have Sentinels blocking, Sabine can get hit into can get kind of guarded by, where Moff is for sure getting in.
I hear you. Cool card. Is that the art for the mat we saw earlier?
I believe so, yeah.
Yeah, because the art's so awesome. That's like probably one of my favorite arts in the set is that right there.
Yep. Oh, yeah. What a surprise. Another, I don't know how to pronounce that first name, but Amelia Hutt. She just has banger after banger after banger after banger.
Oh, the artist?
Yeah, the artist.
All right. I was like, what are you talking about? Is there a spoiler on this?
Speaking of other spoilers, though, one card that actually I think will be interesting, and I might think it might see some play personally. We'll have to see. is the Kintan Intimidator. A common, 1-cost cunning villainy, 1/4 underworld, on attack, exhaust the defender. I think in limited, this is a very strong card, but even in construct, being underworld, we've seen some things that matter with that. And if you try and take the game a little longer, being able to exhaust their units is pretty strong.
So my only issue with that card, and the reason why I think it's terrible, is because it says the defender, not a unit. So that means you have to attack the unit. So if it's like Darth Vader, you have to just basically trade this guy for an exhaust.
Kamikaze the boy to exhaust the other guy. I mean, sometimes that might be worth. I think Faith just really loves units with the 1/4 stat line.
1/4 tribal decks are my jam.
That just really speaks to the boy, and this guy is an obvious candidate.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he's a 1/4 underworld. If we end up getting like more buff effects for underworld and stuff like that.
True. Like if we have a card that like costs 1 that you can return an underworld. If you return an underworld to your hand, you deal 3 damage. That could be cool. Yeah, kind of like, and like a leader, and like
so you could exhaust the boy, you're attacking to the boy, exhaust him, and then ideally he stays alive with the 4 HP, and then you could use McClunky to bounce him back.
And if you had like a leader that dealt damage when you played an underworld card, that might, make sense. Just an idea.
Maybe. Perhaps. But like I said, if we get like a fleet lieutenant or a wing leader type, because in set 1, 1-cost 1/4 is actually kind of my jam. It's R2, that little guy. You put some experience on him, or you push him around with a fleet lieutenant. He's doing some work. So maybe. But I think he's going to be just a draft card personally.
What else do we see in the spoilers that you guys find interesting?
Like honestly, like the card that I actually think is the most actual banger of the cards that have been released since the last time we were talking on the podcast is Cloud Rider. This is a 2-cost cunning unit, ground unit more specifically, 3/1 underworld that has ambush. Simple yet very effective. A 3/1 ambush to me just seems nutty.
Mm-hmm.
You can, if you go, this isn't a turn 1 play unless you're going second, weirdly enough. But if you're going second, you can just kill off your opponent's turn 1 play if that's what you're into. You can order this with Cad Bane, the most beneficial way you want, so you can ambush something and then trigger it to kill the guy you ambush and put the damage from Cad Bane trigger where you really want it. Or you can just go into a 4 health unit, assuming it's the only one they have on the board. You can trade into a 4 health overall. So, I mean, this guy just seems great. He's only common. This guy feels very top of the draft pick list for me. Like, I don't know if he's pick one worthy, but he might be. Pack isn't like amazing.
So I think this card's probably going to see a lot of vector play from set 1. I think it pairs really well with Cobb Vanth, who I don't think we really talked about last podcast.
Yeah, that guy is actually kind of rad too. Yeah, we kind of skipped over that.
I didn't like at first reading the card really understand how good he was, and then I saw him like be played, and he's just like, oh, okay, no, he's actually nuts. Because like Cobb Vanthing on turn 2, and then like getting a Cloud Rider, and then you're just like, yep, I have this like free 3/1, I can ambush him whenever I want. Like, is really good. Like I could imagine him with like Hero Boba, so he's actually just a 4/1 for 2. You get for free off a Cobb Vanth. Like that's just massive value. Like I don't know, that's pretty nuts to me. And I think that there's some real potential with that guy. So I agree. I think this card's pretty nuts as well. I think ambush is probably the strongest keyword in the game. Not really that close. And this guy just has it for free. And notably as well with the Bounty Hunter decks, he's a 2-cost that you don't want to play on turn 1, but you're happy to play on turn 2. But then you can maybe pay 1 for a bounty and then play him and collect the bounty, right? Like that's kind of
right.
I think something that is really notable for this guy.
We got 2 cards as well this week, which kind of interact with him, either making other ambushes with the leader or also with a pretty awesome piece of art, which was also on a playmat. And so what are your guys' thoughts of how this interacts with Infamy's Nest?
You're just You're just messing around now. These guys
He's
just
just showing us in his nest. And for the folks at home, he might not know what that card is. Why don't you go ahead and tell him?
It's a 6-cost cunning card. Unit, ground. 5/4 underworld. Ambush. And also has the effect, while a friendly unit, including this one, is attacking using ambush, the defender gets -3/-0. So while it's cost 6, if you do have it out, your Cloud Riders might have a chance of surviving as well and then becoming even stronger.
So we have Ambush Matters card. At the very least, this is going to be a good draft card. 100%.
So beautiful art. Beautiful art.
Comes out, Ambush is 5/4, but the defender gets -3. So she's almost certainly going to stick around.
Yeah, I mean, I think if she was a 5-cost, she'd be nuts.
She'd be nutty, right?
Yeah, but at 6, I think she's fine. She'll probably see some play for set 2 meta because I think she's really good, especially if I've seen a lot of people playing Hero Boba to like good effect right now, and I think that it could be a deck that's actually pretty reasonable in set 2. Of course, there's still plenty of cards to come out that could change that, but like as of right now, I think he's a good leader to have, and obviously she pairs up really well being a 6/4 with him, and then giving the -3 on to attack, keep her alive is, pretty massive. So I think that, yeah, I mean, ambush card gonna be good, reasonable stat line.
Always draft ambush cards in drafts. Like if your card has ambush on it, be like, I'm gonna add this card to my deck.
Well, this card is very similar to Syndicate Lackeys, which from set 1.
Syndicate Lackeys with +1 with an ability.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So how would you rate this versus Syndicate? Like, is the Syndicate Lackeys 1 resource cheaper, that much more important in your opinion?
I mean, it can be for sure. I think it depends on what you're attacking, because like the problem with Syndicate Lackeys a lot of the time is whenever he attacks in, he trades.
He usually just trades, yeah.
So like her being able to survive because the -3 is pretty massive. Like it really depends on the meta though, because like the best thing about her and like Lackeys is that they can potentially kill a leader if paired with like Hero Boba. I keep bringing him up, but like I think it's the best pairing for these kind of cards. Being able to attack for 6 is pretty important. So for like Lackey, he can like trade with Han Solo a turn he comes out because he shoots a resource into play, where Enfys Nest is probably a turn behind unless you've also ramped. But like the Boba decks tend to just want to, the Hero Boba decks tend to want to just play ambush characters on curve and just kill your stuff and keep them alive kind of deal. So they don't really ramp too often from what I've seen. So it'll be interesting to see how this meta shakes out. Like it's going to be fun and interesting, honestly, to see where everything goes and what's good and what's not. Well, I got one last one before we move on, if that's okay, Faith.
Okay.
I mean, we didn't even mention the fact that we basically got Wookiee tribal.
Yeah, I'm not talking about Wookiees.
Wookiees look dope, dude. What do you mean?
There's one good one. There's Fugitive Wookiee. He's the only one that's good. It's a 2-cost cunning ground unit, 3/3, has a bounty exhausted unit. I think it's like the least bad bounty that are on cards. So it's like one that like I definitely want to play.
It's also the third 3-power cunning card in this set, with both with Cloud Rider, Wookiee here, and with Doctor
Azavon or whatever his name is. Yeah.
So that could be a pretty aggressive deck actually. Some cunning 3-power boys, that could be pretty strong.
Anyway, so my card I think is actually pretty impactful for the game currently is Black Sun Starfighter. It's just a villainy aspect wise space unit, 3 costs, 3/2, underworld vehicle fighter, but the important part is that it has Sentinel. And I think one of the biggest things for it as well is it's pullable by Darth Vader. And I think that this card is exactly a card that Darth Vader needed and wanted for his deck. While it's not Imperial, and the synergies with the keywords don't matter, just the fact that it's a spaceship Sentinel that he can pull is like super important, especially when you're like, you're clearing up the ground and they go like Fetch Fire Spray. You're like, oh man, wish I had a space Sentinel. Well, Vader can now get you that and try to help you stave off the Fetch Fire Spray, at least for a turn, and help you try to maybe barrage next turn or whatever to try to alleviate that. So I think this card, while it looks unassuming, might be a pretty big player in the meta for a little bit here.
Yeah, it seems solid. 3/2 Sentinel in space is like good enough. It's only a single aspect. It's common, so it's an absolutely fine draft card. This week we got a lot of like good commons for draft. I feel like that.
Yeah. Also, it's great art on that card, by the way. Like, pretty sweet. I can't wait to see that in hyperspace. Honestly, it's gonna look pretty sweet.
Another card that looks pretty sweet is the leader that we got revealed. Dudeness, would you like to talk about the leader that we had revealed on Tuesday?
Fennec Shan, honoring the deal. So she is the common cunning heroism leader. So this is what you're going to be using in draft a lot. And she seems like a really solid draft card, spoiler alert. And she has an action. You can pay 1 resource, exhaust it, and play a unit that costs 4 or less from your hand, paying its costs, and then you give it ambush for this phase. We were just talking about how good ambush is, right? Well, she gives stuff ambush. So this actually combos really well with Infy's Nest, potentially. You have Infy's Nest, and then you can just give all your stuff ambush, -3. But yeah, giving your stuff ambush, pretty sweet. And then for 5 resources, you deploy her. She becomes a 4/4 Saboteur. And as an action, you can still play units that cost 4 or less and give it an ambush. The 4/4 Saboteur is less ideal, coming from an IG-88 player. That it's going to be a problem, but giving ambush to your stuff is not a problem. It's going to be a problem for your opponent.
Yeah,
also, just quick want to point out another banger art from Amelia Hutt.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think she's bad by any means. I haven't tested with her yet, so I can't say just first impressions. To me, I think it needed to be 5 or less. I think that's a really key number there to have, especially for like cards like Poe, and that kind of stuff. She's obviously pretty good with like K2SO, and she really wants a lot of 4 drops in her deck, I feel like. But I just don't know how you're gonna build her. It'll be interesting. Like, it's not bad. She probably crushes aggro. So if you want to never lose to aggro, you play this card because you'll probably never lose.
I mean, it's common, so it feels like one of those things where it's just more. It might just have more utility in draft over Premier, the same way Jin did in set 1.
True, very true.
It would be very unfortunate if a yellow hero got 2 of those same leaders back to back in sets, thus giving them less options for leaders potentially in Premier. But that being said, she does seem really cool for draft, and I'm a draft boy, so
I drafted a ton. I'm actually drafting again on Saturday, so I can't wait.
I think I might have a draft myself on Saturday.
Well, I'll see you there.
I think giving a card like Y-Wing could be interesting for her ambush ability, because you just get that on attack trigger with the ambush, so that could be something to look at. Or even Poe. Poe could be really good, actually. Ambush and
Poe with who?
She's 4 or less.
Fennec? With Fennec?
She can only do 4 or less. Poe is 5.
No, I'm sorry. Rose, not Poe.
Rose. Yes. Rose. She's good with.
Yes, of course. Rose. Why don't you go ahead and explain to the folks at home what Rose is for those that might not be?
Yeah, for those that haven't been following the last few episodes, Rose is a 4-cost Vigilance, Heroism, blue-white card, which is a ground unit. She's a 2/6 shielded, and on attack, you can remove a shield, a unit with a shield, and give them 2 experience counters. And for those who don't know, when you have ambush and shielded, you get the choice of which one you want to resolve first. So you are able to, if you want, attack with the unit, deal the damage from each other, and then put the shield on afterwards. With Rose, you probably wouldn't do that. You would probably put the shield on, trigger the on attack trigger to take off her shield to give her experience, and then hit the other unit. But it is something you can do.
It's a 4/8. It's a 4/8 ambush for 5. Essentially, is what we're working with here.
Yep.
Is that good? That seems good. I don't know about you guys, but that seems to be okay.
That's a limited play too, because it's Rose is uncommon, so you might see that limited.
There's no might. That's going to happen to somebody, and they're just going to be looking at you dumbfounded.
Well, Limited is one way in which you can play the game, and we all are looking forward to Set 2 Limited. However, the main way that people are going to play Star Wars is through the Premiere format, which is a constructed format. And while we are looking forward to Set 2, we are currently nearing the end of Set 1. And we got a great question from Marauder Mo for our mailbag question. The question is, as we're nearing the end of Set 1 meta, I've seen it said that the SWU Set 1 meta is the healthiest meta in any TCG Set 1 ever. I'd love to hear you guys weigh in on this claim. So, what do we think?
Well, personally, I think that it's probably correct. I mean, I haven't played every single card game out there, so
Right.
there might be some obscure card game, so I'll apologize if I haven't mentioned that card game. But for the major card games, I do feel like this Set 1 meta was very diverse. And I'm sure other Set 1 metas have had metas that were solid, that had, a couple of characters, 2 or 3, whatever. But we legitimately had, I think, 6 or 7 leaders that won, like, large event. Like, I think Han took down some decent-sized events. Obviously, Boba, Sabine, Iden. I think
Vader.
Krennic took down Vader. I think Palpatine even took down some decently large events. Like, I don't know if there's a leader that I can name other than the couple of the bad ones that didn't take down at least a 20+ person store showdown, and many others took down larger events than just store showdown. So to me, having the option to play multiple leaders, especially when many of us thought it was Sabine, Boba, some blue-green villain control deck, and that was the
Control
meta.
show, yeah.
That was the heading into Set 1, that was these are the best 3 decks, you have to be playing these 3. And it turned out that there was just actually 8 decks you could play.
I'm going to come at it from a different angle, right? So partly is it it's a well-designed first set with a wide array of viable decks. But another part of it is that there's a large skill expression in this game. There's a much larger skill gap in this game than other card games because of sequencing, of when to claim the initiative. There are so many little things in this game that you don't really have to worry about in other games that really sets the great players from the just good ones. And I think that will allow a really great player to maybe carry, a deck that's not as good.
Maybe merging these two ideas together. One thing that I've mentioned a few times, which I really like about Star Wars Unlimited, is that not only do we have leaders, which you make a choice, you also make a choice on the base, which gives you your second color, which really helps round out your deck and is an expression piece of expression. You can play Luke in a variety of ways, being more command, being more aggressive. They are the same leader, but different ways of playing. And as well, being able to play cards out of aspect also adds a skill expression, adds unknown, where you can be pretty sure what your opponent's playing. But someone like a leader like Luke Skywalker, I think having a Power of the Dark Side in there can be such a strong play at times, and often your opponent will not be expecting it. That's something that I think can be really interesting, can be really to your advantage if you know what your card's doing, what your leader's doing. So I think not only, yes, we have a variety of leaders being played, and you can express them in different skills, but even the same leader being played different ways is still really cool to see.
I mean, the resource choices, the resource decisions, that's a fairly unique mechanic, because any card you resource, now you're not going to be able to play that card. Now you have one fewer copy of that card to play in your deck. So, I mean, there's just, like I said, so many little choices that add up that just a better player can just, by being better at these small choices, can accumulate an advantage over the less experienced.
Absolutely. And especially brand new players, it's if you haven't played a ton of card games, and even if you have, you can learn the game quickly and easily. That's not the problem. Learning the game is fine. You can understand the basic mechanics, but then to get it to a competitive level is a whole different ball game. So I agree that yes, a lot of the decks that might have won larger events, store showdowns, a little bit more of a grain of salt, because I do think store showdowns where you're going to have a ton of casual people with a small group of competitive players. So realistically, you're probably you're gonna know who you're gonna face in the top 8.
More likely than not, yeah.
Or at least have a decent idea of who will likely be fighting for those spots, right? So I understand what you're saying for that, but like I think Han even won like a big event, and I didn't think that Han was going to be reasonable to play at all. I can't remember the event exactly, but I feel like he did. But I could be wrong. But just like there was plenty of decks that people who play very competitively had suggested, like playing like a multitude of different leaders. It's just like that for me is what spells diversity. When like the competitive players, I'm putting up air quotes. You guys can't see that, but the competitive players deem like 5 or 6 leaders to be competitive in a card game. It typically isn't the case. Like I feel like even in like what's it called, Flesh and Blood, for example, like they also have like a similar leader kind of style of game, but there's usually only like 3 or 4 that are like really like top tier playable. A couple of little fringe stuff, but usually there's like only a couple that are actually like, if you want to win, you're gonna play one of these. So it's nice for in set 1 to have that. So I hope that they continue that with set 2. And it seems like so far from what I'm seeing from testing that there's a lot of good options to play and a multitude of old leaders, new leaders, with older cards, newer cards. Like there's just so many options now. It's going to be fun to see all of the deck building constructions. And a point that Faith made is that no one's even scratched the surface yet on having off aspect cards that no one's expecting, especially in closed deck list events. Because open deck lists, they're going to know it's there so they can play around it. But in closed deck list events, popping in a single Power of the Dark Side in your Luke Skywalker hero deck for 5, and they're like, oh, I'm going to play my leader out for nothing. And you're like, hey, pay 5, sacrifice a unit. And they're like, oh no, why are you playing that card?
What is he doing?
Why would you be doing that, you crazy human being? And then Faith's like, haha, you want me to pay 6 for removal? I'm paying 5. Like,
it's funny you say that because my brother has been playing a lot of Green Luke. That's kind of been his jam lately. And he's been talking about maybe slipping in the Power of the Dark Side because that could just be super spicy.
Yeah, I mean, I think for like weekly events, like if you're not winning your weekly events, getting frisky with like something like Prize Strike and like a green red deck.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
5, boom, 3 attack, kill you out of nowhere because they're not gonna account for that, right?
Nope.
I bet you if you put 2 Surprise Strikes in your deck and you just resource it early and you can't play it, and then hopefully at the end of the game when you need it, it's gonna be in your hand. Like I think those might be worth it sometimes in closed deck list events. So something that people haven't even like started like considering yet. I don't think.
That kind of stuff is good for sure in draft.
Mm-hmm.
Like I've had good experience with the draft playing like as a Prize Strike for 4. All of a sudden, boom, because nobody's playing around that.
Playing an Overwhelming Mirage for 7 and limited, it still feels good.
Yeah.
I would say one other part with all of the talking about the set 1 meta, we do have to have a little bit of grain of salt and say there is a lot of similarity in decks. If you're running a red hero deck, you're running K2 right now in basically every single red hero. Mm-hmm. That is a product of only having 252 cards. We're doubling the number of cards in the set 2 meta, and I'm thinking we're going to get a lot more, not niche strategies, but a lot more strategies which are going to have some unique and different options. So that's not saying that, oh, Star Wars is bad because all hero decks are mostly running Fleet Lieutenant. It just means that we only have a small card pool. But I think, we're going to have like a Rebel aggro deck, and then we're going to have a non-Rebel aggro deck, which won't be running Fleet Lieutenant. So I'm excited for that.
Aggro deck.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm excited for that.
We'll have a boss bounty hunter deck with bounties and everything else and all the stuff. So
you'll have some which are going to be a little bit more specific and some that are going to be a little bit more vague, but it's just going to be an interesting time to really, again, let that creative expression out whilst hopefully still carrying on that diversity of leaders.
Say one thing, I'm going to get a little sentimental here, is that appreciate the last month or so of the last set 1 meta we'll ever have for Star Wars Unlimited. From here on out, there will always be multiple sets. So we'll never be back in a point where we only had 250 cards. So you just keep that in mind, appreciate, the quote unquote history of what we're experiencing right now, and big thanks to FFG and all of the staff members over there for just creating an awesome game that we love to
Yes,
play
sir.
and talk about.
Absolutely.
And just a little bit on that point, we are gonna, because we're doubling the number of cards in the set and that we have access to, there's going to be hopefully quite a bit of change from our set 1s to set 2s. Let us know in the comments what you think of the set 1 meta as set 2 quickly approaches. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you next time on Outmaneuver.